friends and colleagues. Welcome back to the Think Catalyst podcast. I am Ricardo Ferraris, and I'm here with my business partner, Vivek Kuchibotla. Good afternoon, Vivek.
How are you?
Very good. Very good. We're here with an interesting topic today because we get asked this question quite often about what we do and the importance of some of the services that we do. And especially as it relates to agency search consultants, and how are they impacting in the process of finding an agency for an advertiser, and if they're really necessary. So that's sort of the title. Any initial thoughts,
That's the
Vivek?
big question. Are they necessary?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big question. And I think the fact that the process of finding an agency in Latin America, at least, is handled primarily in-house. It's handled by the marketing department, and the procurement department be involved as well. So when we launched our business, the big question was, why are you guys even launching this?
Mm-hmm.
Is this service really necessary? What's the need? Why would an agency outsource something that they do effectively in-house? And I think the key word there is effectively. I don't think they do it effectively. It's done, but it's not done effectively. And those are the reasons that this service is needed, and that's what we're gonna talk about in this podcast.
It's worth mentioning that Vivek, his dark past was a client side, on the client side, as well as the agency side. He's been a client and he's been an agency leader. Whereas I have worked on the agency side, probably the darker side, for even more time, my whole career. But the purpose of the business, when we started Think Catalyst in the consultancy, we thought that a service to help advertisers find agencies would be interesting. And so we started AdMatch. AdMatch is our proprietary agency search service for advertisers. So with that in mind, as Vivek just said, how effective is really an agency search when done in-house versus when done by consultants? It's also worth mentioning that about 7 to 8 pitches out of 10 in Europe and in the United States are actually handled by consultants in one form or another. Whereas in Latin America, it's not very much a part of the culture. And we think that there's an opportunity to improve significantly. And we'll talk some of the reasons why that is important. So with that in mind, Vivek, you wanna start with the first point?
Let's roll out the facts.
Yeah.
When we say that it's not being done effectively, that's a significant challenge. So now let's explain why we're challenging that word. So the first fact we want to roll out is that average chief marketing officer tenure and the average length of the advertiser agency relationship are both decreasing. They have been decreasing now for at least 10 to 15 years and are currently at the lowest level ever, the lowest tenure ever. Something is seriously wrong. Something is not working. So the average CMO tenure is 3 years, and the average length of advertiser agency relationship is coincidentally also 3 years. There has to be a link there somewhere. We don't have data, but there has to be a link. But I think the interesting thing here is that an agency is switched out, or a marketing director or CMO is switched out when the business is not hitting its results. That's the bottom line is always about the business reaching its goals. So if you're not hitting your goals, there's going to be change, and there is actually a lot of change going on. So that's one of the first facts we want to throw out there. You want to add something to that, Ricardo?
Yeah, I mean, it's a vicious cycle because we are so focused on hitting the short-term goals. And brands are not built, I mean, brands, we can hit short-term goals, but they're not sustainable going forward long term. You need to focus on the fundamentals of brand building and equity building on brands, and that takes time. And that partnership is something that has been lost over the years. And this is where we, Vivek and I, push for working with the right agency, okay, and working with that agency during the ups and downs, because there are ups and downs, and fix your relationship before going out to do another search if the relationship has gone bad. But getting the right agency for the right job for the right brand is the first thing that needs to be assessed. So short-term goals are good if you can reach them, but they're not sustainable long-term. And this is where CMOs and agencies get in trouble in terms of what their expectations is. And this is why there are these shorter relationship cycles that happen in the client agency relationships.
The fate of the CMO and the fate of the agency are intertwined. And I think this trend is no good for either one of them, and it needs to be reversed for everyone's benefit. The average tenure of the relationship needs to start increasing. The average tenure of a CMO needs to start increasing again. So that was fact number one. You want to go with fact number two?
Yeah, I was just going to mention one more thing, and that is the number of articles that I've seen recently about the extension of CMOs is for me, it's mind-boggling. I think the CMO has a very important role in the organization, but there's a lot of questioning as to whether, that role is actually necessary. And you couple that with the fact that brands like Young and Rubicam and J. Walter Thompson and Wunderman have now disappeared, and big agencies are becoming, or traditional agencies are becoming, less relevant. This is where all of this, comes together, and there's a lot of questioning about exactly, how the two organizations should work together. So now, going on to point number two, the majority, so the habit is searching for an agency in-house, right? And our understanding, our findings have shown that most advertisers really do not have the knowledge necessary to make the agency solution choice for their business. And this is because the advertising, media, and communications business has become much, much more complex than ever, right? And in previous years, there were fewer agencies, there were fewer medias to choose. Most of them did everything and simplified the whole process for the client. I mean, you bought television, you bought radio, you bought 2 or 3 billboard ads. That was your media plan. Now it's a much more complex plan. It needs much more developed and sophisticated media planning skills, creative skills as well. And there's a raft of specialized agencies that have emerged around this. And so the knowledge needed in terms of the agency selection when you go to a pitch is very different and much deeper. And this is where a consultant, I think, can come in and provide significant help and support and value.
You know, Tales from Dark Side, back when I was on the client side, um, we're talking about how uh, the advertising industry has become more complex. But in parallel to that, the marketing industry has become much more complicated. In the old days, it really didn't matter if you were selling cars, hamburgers, or soap. The business model was very simple. Uh, you advertised in mass media to build your brand and to convince your target consumer to go to a physical location. Could be a dealership, it could be a restaurant, or it could be a supermarket, but there they would find the product that you were advertising. So it was almost a standardized business model for the marketer. But that's also there's some models that are like that, very few. Now there's all sorts of different models. For example, you have Amazon, where there's no physical marketplace anymore. There's no store you go to. Um, there's Airbnb, which basically sells you a hotel room without actually owning a hotel. Or there's direct to consumer models like Harry's razor blades, where you make a subscription and they'll send you a pack of razor blades every month. It's a subscription model. It's no longer a go to the store and buy razor blades model. So there's huge levels of complication happening now, and that makes it so much harder to choose exactly the right model for your business and the agency solution with the skill set that you require. And with all due respect, I can think of about maximum 10 companies in the world that have enough knowledge of the market to be able to run these things on their own. The vast majority of companies do not have this knowledge, and they're flying blind. They're stepping on all the mines that they find in the industry, and it's blowing up on them.
Imagine choosing the wrong agency, Vivek. It's like an invitation to immediately have a bad relationship. It starts off on a bad foot. You know, people are then questioned as to, you know, what was the reasoning behind the choice and so forth. I've known CMOs who have, you know, completely blown their opportunities to grow and be promoted because they were choosing the wrong agency. And not just the agency, but this affects the entire marketing budget going forward if you're picking the wrong agency. So
that goes back to point number one, and
yeah,
then 2.5 years down the road, you're fired,
you're back.
and you got to start this cycle over again.
You're back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
So go with point number three.
Yeah, I'll go with point number three because it hits me personally, and I live this. And frankly, this situation is caused by both the advertisers as well as agencies. But as agencies have, as over the course of time, the sector has developed, agencies are probably struggling more now than ever in their history, and they're fighting for survival. Their focus is on doing anything and everything possible to win new business, not necessarily always in the client's best interest. And so there's a negative spiral that has been created as it relates to the fact that, you know, the right agent, the agency and the marketer are not um, are not coming together under the same objectives and understanding of what they can do in terms of their capabilities and expectations.
You know, the if an agency is struggling and fighting for its survival, and a lot of them unfortunately have not survived. You mentioned earlier brands like JWT and YNR that no longer exist. They've been merged out of existence, and we've all heard about significant levels of layoffs in companies such as WPP. And we've all heard of clients complaining about having to deal with very junior people. Um, in this environment, if an agency does whatever it has to do to win the next pitch, this is totally justifiable from the agency perspective. They're just trying to stay alive. But in trying to win the pitch, they're doing what's right for them to survive, but that, as you said, might not be the right solution for the advertiser that is going to hire them. And often you get situations where promises are made that cannot be delivered, um, or problems are sort of pushed under the rug. So once we have the business, we'll deal with them and we'll figure out how to solve them. And what the end result of that for advertisers is what you see is not what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 months down the road, the advertiser's surprised and angry, and the relationship starts to unravel. And give it another year or so, and we're back to point number one. The CMO just got fired, or the agency just got fired, and we're starting from scratch again. So in this circumstance, it's very hard for the advertiser to actually make their way through all of the promises that are being thrown at them, and actually um, knowing who they should believe, whose promises they should believe, and which agency they should actually choose.
I
They
would
don't
add,
get it right very often.
I would add, Vivek, and I've seen this a zillion times, that the origin of this comes with both sides at fault. On the advertising side, on the advertiser side, the brief is not fully developed and it's not fully clear for the pitch. And so agencies just throw themselves at the pitch uh, without really knowing what the marketer and advertiser issues are. But on the other side, the agencies are not also asking the right questions often enough early in the process to really identify what the real problem is. And so when that happens, it's again, you mentioned earlier, it's flying blind on all levels. So that has to be fixed.
Absolutely.
And I think here is the consultant's role is to really identify the real need. So then that match of agencies participating in a pitch process is the correct one. All right. You want to go with the next
Here's
point?
another point. Here's another point that I think it's important to consider. But the marketing versus procurement struggle is real.
Yeah.
And it's not helping the process. And what do we mean by the marketing versus procurement struggle? Well, they're both working together to buy a product, and the product is the service of an agency. And the idea is provided by the agency. And this is a very hard product to evaluate. So marketing will look for one thing in an agency, procurement will look for another thing in an agency, and marketing has a bonusing structure and procurement has a bonusing structure that are based on different KPIs. They're not aligned typically. So what you have is two competing functions trying to get their way. basically, and choose the partner that they want. And often marketing is a loser in this struggle, and ends up having to work with a quote unquote cheap agency versus the agency that they want to work with. And this never ends well. And I think uh, agencies can sort of, on a gut feeling level, they know that some of the struggle is going on, but I think the struggle is much larger than agencies are actually aware of.
And the thinking should not be, well, if it doesn't work, I'll change the agency in a year or two. That's insanity, honestly. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the whole marketing budget is blown and 2 years, more than 2 years have gone by and opportunities are missed and wasted in terms of, potentially growing share or growing the business.
Well, while you've been screwing around, your competitor
Oh, yeah.
has been doing good marketing and building his share,
Yeah.
while you've been wasting your budget and your time and your effort.
Yeah.
So that has to be taken into account always. Um, Making marketing and procurement play nicely together is not something that an agency can do, but a third party, an independent third party that understands the marketing dynamics or procurement dynamics and the agency dynamics involved, can certainly help um, align these two departments and bring the power struggle under control. And this is crucial.
So let's
This is
talk about
crucial.
that for a second, because this is where the rubber hits the road and where an impartial and an experienced third-party consultant can really, really help put together the right agency for the advertiser. And this comes with a professional approach to the pitch that includes a proper briefing, a proper understanding of the business issues, but also an understanding of a number of other things that are important for the agency to know to put together an effective proposal, a real proposal, and one that meets the needs, including statement of work, including staffing and organization, including ways of working, and understanding what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, where the issues have been, but having a very sincere and open conversation about these issues. And again, the third party consultant can allow these conversations to flow quite productively, and with the intention of delivering, strong value on both sides. You want your agency to do well. You want your agency to be strong. You want your agency to make money, right? If not, they will be not thinking about your business. They'll be thinking about how to do all the other things to survive, which we mentioned earlier is not good. And of course, a marketer wants a strong partner because that strong partner can also bring incredible value and ideas and thinking to the business that not normally would be done by the marketing department. And that would result in a, very favorable business outcome as well.
Mhm. I think an example would be good, just to illustrate what we're talking about with the different priorities of marketing and procurement. We recently did a media pitch where the procurement department wanted payment terms that no agency would accept. So we were able to speak with the procurement people and explain to them exactly what the implications in the purchase of media their suggested payment terms would have, and how much money they would actually lose in terms of prepayments and all of the cool things that media people do um, to maximize the investment. And they understood and they modified the payment terms to something that agencies could work with. Marketing people didn't really worry about payment terms. It wasn't their concern. to be honest. They were more worried about the specific sets of tools that were going to be available. And again, we helped them understand where they could find those tools. So finally, the solution was one that both departments could live with.
No, and that particular client turned those different payment terms into something positive and productive for them as well, because it also gave them leverage to have better terms on other aspects of the media process that were valuable to them. So it was a win-win. It was a win-win for the client. It was a win-win for the agency. And it was also a win-win for the media, which is often affected and never consulted in these media pitches and with promises made.
We use the expression power struggle
Mhm.
deliberately because it is a power struggle. And when there is a power struggle, you normally need a third party to come and impartially break the deadlock, because otherwise it's just a winner and a loser. And what we want is two winners.
So
That's our job.
we started talking about how we got into this business and how we started AdMatch and why we did this. We're far from having a good system. The current system isn't working well. The current ways of pitching businesses is not delivering good outcomes. And it's also not healthy for the agencies either, because they are not often they're not invited without really the full understanding as to where the pitch is going and what it's supposed to be. Marketers, unfortunately, are choosing agencies that are not really necessarily the ones that they need for their business. And so the points that we mentioned just now are all about why there's a strong case to reconsider and change this and use agency search consultants. And they're very much worth the investment in terms of the quality, the output, the relationship, but also in terms of making much more efficient how marketing is going to work for them going forward. You want to do a quick
So
summary of the
yeah,
5 points, Vivek?
so let's make the final argument. Are search consultants necessary? Here's why they're necessary.
Yeah.
Average CMO tenure in the job and the average duration of the agency advertiser relationship is going down. It's at dangerous levels. It's down to 3 years. This trend shows that something is wrong, and that trend needs to be lengthened. It needs to be reversed. Point number one. Point number two, the vast majority of companies do not have in-depth knowledge in-house in order to choose an agency solution in an advertising industry that's become more complex than ever. Reason number three, agencies are struggling like never before, and they're fighting for their very survival, and therefore they're likely to make promises that they can't keep just in order to win your business. And that's not good for the advertiser. Point number four, the marketing versus procurement struggle is real, and it's not helping the process work efficiently. And point number five, an impartial and experienced third party is crucial to help the agency and the advertiser come to a better outcome. Let's remember that in this phase, the advertiser and the agency are in a negotiation, and the third party, who both sides will listen to, can help make that outcome the best possible outcome and not have a I win, you lose type situation. So those are our arguments as to why search consultant services are really necessary.
I want to thank everyone for
My
joining us today. Like us, share us, And if you have further questions about what we're doing with agency search, you can contact me or Vivek. Happy to answer any other further questions or concerns you may have. And if you need some help, well, we can discuss that as well. This is an important podcast. We think that there is strong value with the services that consultants do. And in the end are to the benefit of the advertiser as well as the agency, but to the benefit of the advertiser and their ability to more sensibly grow their business and be much more effective in their marketing efforts. So thanks again for joining us, Vivek.
Thank you.
Excellent conversation. I'm sure we'll have a lot of feedback like we've had most recently. And thanks everyone for joining us.